Welcome to another episode of Holocaust Remembrance Around the World, a monthly video series sponsored by the Emil A. and Jenny Fish Center at Yeshiva University, in which we find amazing people from all around the world who are shaping and reshaping Holocaust memory and education. My name is Lois Roman, and I'm the producer of this series. Today, we are traveling to Czechia, the former Czech Republic, to speak with Karen Koblitz. Ms. Koblitz is an American artist and professor emeritus from the University of Southern California, USC, where she taught for 23 years. Her works in ceramics and other media have been displayed all over the world, but today she is here to speak with us about her latest project in Pacov, Czechia, where she started a nonprofit that bought a synagogue and a rabbi's house in this small town in Czechia. And she is working on restoring these buildings back to their original grandeur from before World War II. Karen, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to talk about my work that I'm doing in the Czech Republic.
So this is such an unusual situation. How did it come to be that an artist from California ends up purchasing a synagogue building in the Czech Republic and making it your now life's work to restore it to what it used to be? Tell us about how you got involved in this project.
Well, I have been the family genealogist, I would say, and would ask questions, especially of my mother's family. But I knew very little about my father's family, other than they came from what was Bohemia. And so I met a genealogist in Prague, in Los Angeles, at the International Genealogical Society meeting in 2010. And in 2014, my husband and I traveled to the Czech Republic, and we met with Julius Müller is his name, and he has the Toledot Foundation in Prague that helps people trace their familiar roots, Jewish family roots. And so instead of meeting with him and opening a book and looking at charts, he said, get in the car. And we drove down to Southern Bohemia, and he showed me locations where my family came from and where my great-great-grandfather Moses was married. His first wife died in 1859, and in 1860, he remarried a woman named Julia or Johanna Meller from Pacov, a town of 5,000 people today in the Bohemian Moravian highlands of the south of the country. And he took us to Pacov itself and showed us this beautiful synagogue where they were married in 1860. And this building is the only building in the center of town that it was in terrible disarray. And it looked so sad, and it was a storehouse. So at that point, I said to myself, I must do something about this. I must, try to find people that will help me restore the synagogue. And in 2015, Julius introduced me to Pavel Ticho, who's Czech, who spent summers near Pacov with his grandparents. He now lives in Brussels and works for the EU. He is not Jewish, but he had the same idea that I had to restore this lovely synagogue. And we came together and we formed the nonprofit Tikkun Pacov, and Tikkun means repair.
And so there was a Jewish population in this town, obviously, for a long time, and then World War II occurred, and the Jews in the town were taken off to Jersey. And are there any Jews left in Pacov today?
There are no Jews left in Pacov. Jews had lived in Pacov. There'd been a Jewish community starting in the 16th century.
Wow.
And then in the 1880s was the high point. There were 200 Jews. And then by the time that the Munich Agreement happened and the occupation of Czechoslovakia by the Germans and the Nazis, there were about 97 Jews left in Pacov.
And so when you found this building when you drove up to the building and Julius pointed it out to you and said, this decrepit, falling down structure is the synagogue? What was your reaction? I mean, you're an American, you're in California, there are synagogues all over the place. How did you first react?
It first made me incredibly sad because it's a really beautiful, powerful, stately building. And here it is, and it's not in good shape. And we did have an architect look it over and found that there were, many things wrong with it over the decades, where it had, the last service was held in 1941. And so since then, it had either been manufacturing or it became storage for different people. And it was just sitting there. So it made me very sad and disappointed.
And so you did bring along some photos of the building.
Yes.
When you first saw it, I guess, and now during the renovations. And on what kind of timetable are the renovations? Will they be finished soon?
Well, our dream is to finish the renovations by the year 2023. I don't know if that will happen, but we would like to do that because that building was initially built in 1823. So that would be 200-year anniversary. But the synagogue did burn down in 1864. The perimeter walls still remain, but they rebuilt it shortly afterwards.
Interesting. And so when you're done, it will be renovated and you expect it to be used not for services, right? Because there's no Jews left in the town. Will it be an educational center, a music center, a museum? What will be inside of it?
It will definitely be a memorial, a museum to the Jewish community that is lost, where there is interest in the community learning about the Jews that used to live there. And we also envision it being something that the population there visits and enjoys, be it concerts, art exhibitions, lectures. We want it to be an educational center for inclusivity, tolerance, and understanding. That is what we take away from what happened to the Jews that live there, that because there was none of this, I can't say there was none of this within the local community, but because the Germans and their power over the country, that people were afraid to step up or say anything.
So my understanding of anti-Semitism in the Czech lands, even before the war, is that while it was there, it was much more muted than in other European and Eastern European countries. And that after the war, when the Jews didn't return because they were almost obliterated from the Czech lands, that the non-Jewish Czechs maintained a lot of Jewish life there. So there's still the Jewish cemetery. Although this building fell into disrepair, they didn't knock it down and build something else in its place. When you, in your many trips to this area of the Czech Republic or Czechia, what has been your impression of the local people? They're open-minded to wanting to help on this project. How has that gone for you?
Well, in 2019, we had a symposium on what to do with the synagogue, how to approach it, to restore it, and what it would become. And the next weekend was the first weekend that we, as Tikkun Pacov, participated in the Czech Jewish Heritage Day, in which synagogues and other Jewish sites were open to the public. We had 50 visitors from the community. They were very interested. They had never been in the building because it had always been locked. And they just were interested in seeing what it looked like and talking to us and seeing what we were thinking about. I gave a lecture in 2017. This has been a long process. In 2014, I first saw it. In 2015, I was introduced to Pavel. In 2017, we formed Tikkun Pacov, our nonprofit. In 2018, in December, we became owners of the synagogue, and people told us, You will never buy it. Nothing will ever happen. And we did it. And then in 2019, it became a Czech heritage cultural site. And so we have slowly been moving forward in applying to grants and restoring it. And there is a lot of interest in the community. We've done a lot of programming. In 2017, we invited the surviving daughter of the last rabbi of Potsdam. His name was Natan Gutman. We invited his daughter who survived the Holocaust, the only one in the family. She lives in Israel. She was close to 90, if not 90, and she flew all that way. And she came to Potsdam in June of 2017 and gave a number of talks and to full audiences of people from the area, young people, older people. I gave a talk in 2017 in which there were people that remembered the synagogue when they were children that had come to my talk and say, oh, I remember where there's another building next to it. That used to be a grove of trees, you know. And the Jews were very integrated into the community. They were part of the city council. They owned businesses in the town. They were really part of the town. And the children went to school together. Nelly Gutmanova Presma is the name of the rabbi's daughter who visited. She said she had friends from all over the community, not only just Jewish friends.
So that's a very typical story from a lot of towns in Czechia. And I know this because of my involvement with the Memorial Scrolls Trust, which is a nonprofit charity in London that cares for a little more than 1,500 scrolls from the Czech lands that survived the Shoah, and they were brought to London in the 60s and then dispersed around the world. And in that collection are several Torah scrolls from this synagogue, from this town. And you've connected with the Memorial Scrolls Trust. Why don't you give us a little sense of what's happening with your work in looking for artifacts that were in this building in its prime?
So when we first took ownership of the property, we found some liturgical objects in a room upstairs, way up in the attic, and that was probably the area where they were going to be disposed of in a proper manner. And then also I learned about the MST, the Memorial Scrolls Trust in London, and did some research and found that there are 7 Torah scrolls attributed to Potsdam. And in doing this research, I found that the MST has one. It was returned from South Africa because these scrolls have a new life and they bring a memory and they carry on the communities that were lost in the Czech Republic with the new congregations around the world that use them in their congregations. And so there's one in a congregation outside of London, Milton Keynes. There are 5 in the United States, most on the East Coast, in New Jersey and New York, and one in Fremont, California. So as soon as I found that, I started writing to these congregations, and I have built up since 2014 a discourse between them. And so I've seen rabbis change, and, you know, one has a Torah scroll that was in such disrepair, it can never be used. So it is housed in a case in the hall in the lobby of the synagogue. Others use their Torah scrolls in holiday worship. So there's a lot of different stories, and these Torah scrolls are on permanent loan. So they are not owned by these synagogues. But for instance, the synagogue that has the one that's encased in the lobby, they became, and 3 synagogues came together, and this Torah scroll came from another synagogue to their synagogue.
So obviously the first priority is to get the building rebuilt and get a roof on it and get electricity going and get it fixed up. But as an offshoot to this project, you were mentioning to me that there's a plan to have a movie or a film made about
Yes.
these scrolls. And You have a couple of celebrations coming up actually in Czechia. Do you want to tell us about those?
Yes, I do. So first of all, you mentioned the roof and restoring it. Slowly but surely, we have gotten grants from local and European organizations. We repaired the roof last summer. We tore it all off and it was reconstructed, because that's the first thing you have to do, is to keep the rain and moisture out. We took the moisture out of the walls. We removed this spring, we removed the interior structure that a 20th century owner had put in there, lowering the ceiling and obstructing the wall-high, beautiful windows that were part of the original synagogue. So we removed the floor, which was poured in the 20th century and had a lot of moisture in it. So we're preparing now to do the interior. We are also celebrating this year in 2022, in August, again, the Czech Jewish Heritage Day, Sunday, August 14th. And we will open the synagogue to visiting people from the community and the area. And then we have a very special event taking place November 11th through the 14th in 2022 that we are calling 1942, 2022, We Remember. It's an event on the 80th anniversary of the transport of the 97 Pacov Jews and the Jews from the surrounding area to Terezin and other death camps. And we have programming. There's a marvelous book co-written by Julius Mueller and Sheila Palais, a photographer, about many of the synagogues and sites throughout the Czech Republic. And they're going to give a tour of synagogues and Jewish sites in the area. We have historians talking. We have descendants of Pacov Jews that are coming to share stories. So it should be an amazing event that we are widely publicizing. And as part of that, I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity to have a reunion of all the Pacov Torah scrolls. So I wrote to all the congregations in the United States. And because of COVID and because of financial times and uncertainty, none of them said they would be able to come with their Torah scroll. So I had this epiphany. Why not bring the Torah scrolls to this event through a film? And I was introduced to Dale Blumenstein, who is a filmmaker, and his specialty is doing pieces, Jewish documentaries on the Upper Midwest. And I spoke with him and he was very interested in the project. So we have begun. I received a grant. I wrote a grant to the American Embassy in Prague and received a small grant from them for the film. And so Dale and I have started working on the film. And
that's going to be amazing. So the book, I believe the title of the book that you mentioned is Light Beyond the Shadows.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's available on the Memorial Scrolls website bookstore. And all of this really is about Holocaust education.
Yes.
So clearly your project is Holocaust memory and restoring it, but your big push here with all these projects and commemorative events and are about education. So how and in what ways would you like to be remembered as far as someone who stepped up on that topic of Holocaust education in Czechia?
I don't know so much of myself being remembered, but I am very passionate about this project because I want the Jews remembered of course, all over the world in the Czech Republic, but especially of this region because my family comes from there. And because so many of them left even before the war for a better life in different parts of the world. We have people coming from England, Canada, and the United States that have ties to Pacov as descendants. We were trying to get a program together. We almost got it started, and then COVID hit and it went to virtual learning. So we were trying to get a class at the high school together with a class in New Jersey, near the synagogue in New Jersey that has the Pacov scroll. And everyone was on board, and then COVID hit, and it's sort of, I think the teachers there were so over their heads trying to deal with teaching. But we were going to pair these students together to see what projects they could think of on working on together. Now, the Czech Republic over the years has had many projects with education. They've had students in various age groups interview neighbors. I think it's the Lost Neighbor, I can't remember, project that
maybe Missing Neighbors project.
Missing Neighbors, and asking them about remembering the Jewish population in their communities. And so one of the high school teachers in Pacov has been doing programming for the last 5 years of the Jewish community. She's put on plays. The students have learned Jewish songs. We have a cemetery and a rabbi's house in Pacov, and they've gone to the cemetery and looked at the names and maybe done some research on families. So there is an interest from all age levels. And we bring in programming. We've brought in lecturers. We've brought in music, klezmer band. One of our board members has a klezmer band. And the most touching thing happened last summer. I was going to go to the Czech Jewish Heritage Day, but because of COVID, I didn't. And they still had it. There was an artist installation. A Jewish artist from Germany had an art installation outside to draw people in with dates on it to start thinking and talking about the Holocaust. And they had the klezmer band that was going to play outside, but it started to rain. So here we have, there were very few Jews there that were attending this, other than the ones that maybe are involved with the Jewish community in Prague or in Tikkun Pacov. But you had this community of people run out, bring electrical cords to put lights in and chairs, and they had this concert inside the synagogue. And so that was probably the first time since 1941 that music was heard inside the synagogue, which really touched my heart. I wish I'd been there for that.
Yeah, it's a touching story. I feel it just listening to you. So I want to leave our audience with some words of wisdom. You are, may I say, a regular person who lives in the US, who just decided, not with a lot of forethought, I think, that you would change the world in whatever way you could. So what would you like to share with our audience? If you were standing in front of them right now, what words of wisdom would you bestow on them?
Well, I think that you never know what life is going to throw you. You go on these journeys and travels, even in everyday life. And when something piques your interest, to grab onto it and follow it. At the beginning, people told me good luck in buying the synagogue and transforming it, because it probably won't happen, but I didn't even listen to them. And, people, I'm a connector and other people are connectors. So I was connected with Pavel, and then Pavel connected with other people because he's in Europe. He's done the lion's share of work on, things going on in the synagogue, the programming and the restoration and all. But we've all come together as a group. We have members of Tikkun Pacov from the United States, from Germany, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Brussels, and we've come together and we are dedicated to having the former Jewish community remembered, and then also give to the community today something through the building itself, through the installation and personal stories of the people that were the Jews that were part of their community. So I think when on personal level, when you hear a personal story and you get to know a person, it's so much more meaningful than making a whole group statement about people. So that's what we hope to do, is to enlighten the people of Potsdam and the surrounding region.
Fantastic. And I would be remiss if I didn't just ask you about your artwork in general and how this journey and these activities with your genealogy, with Potsdam, with all that you've experienced in the last decade or so, how has that affected your own art? Are you making anything new that is a byproduct of this adventure?
Yes, I am. I started with a piece about my parents when my mother moved into senior living. And I think we all go through this with parents and packing up the home and things that you forgot about and memories. So I did an installation where I remade a lot of items that I gave away out of clay, because I work as a clay artist mainly, and now doing more knitting. But, and then with the story about my family, with Julius, I've been able to go to archives and find that my oldest relative in the area is in the 1756 census in Bradachov, which is a nearby town to Potsdam, tiny farming town, where he applied for a marriage license. He was a shoemaker. And then, I have my family that came over here. And so I started knitting with wool from the Czech Republic, because my great-great-grandfather, Moses Koblitz, who saved our family by bringing us over in 1873, was an agricultural trader. He lived on farms and sold hides, wool, feathers. And so I decided that I wanted to start working with wool from the Czech Republic. And I also, visiting the Pinkas Synagogue in Prague, learned about more family, because I thought all my family came to America, because Koblitz is a very uncommon, unusual name. And I found all these people that perished in the Holocaust, and I started and completed, it took me 2 years, an embroidery with all of their names. Kind of thinking of the Home Sweets home sampler, but this one more kind of a memory of these people. And I've done some art pieces. One of them, Alfred Koblitz, was a jockey and a race car driver, and he perished in the Holocaust in his 20s. And so I made a pair of oversized riding boots for him. I also thought about all the other family that perished, and I started knitting socks and hats and gloves, thinking of them in these camps where they were freezing in the winter and they had no comfort. And so I knit all these things for their comfort, and then I embroidered red I's and S's on them, like monograms. I for Israel, S for Sarah, because the Germans, they were amazing documentarians in that they documented all the people, and you had a trail of paperwork on them. And every single male that was Jewish was given the middle name Israel, and every single female that was Jewish was given the middle name Sarah. So in memory of that, I put these like scarlet letters or whatever onto the knitted objects.
Karen, thank you so much for your time today, for talking to us about Potsdam, for talking to us about your artwork. All of your projects are fascinating and exciting. Big, huge congratulations on finishing the renovation, and I'm looking forward to potentially visiting this location in the future.
Yes, I hope that we will have more visitors from the United States because of the connection with the congregations. So
Great.
Thank you so much.
So much. The Emil A. and Jenny Fish Center at Yeshiva University has a master's program, and you can learn more about it by going to our website.
If there's truth to the saying that history repeats itself, then Holocaust remembrance and the study of genocide is not only a vital part of history, but also a crucial warning for the future.
Confronting Holocaust deniers and distorters is one of the most important tasks of our generation.
The Fish Center at Yeshiva University was founded with this mission of preserving the history of the Holocaust as well as more recent genocides. Our master's program offers a unique investigation of the Holocaust of European Jewry, with an interdisciplinary approach through the lenses of law, social work, history, theology, education, literature, and political science. If this sounds like a path you would like to pursue, apply now or learn more. I'd like to extend an invitation for you to join us and become a member of our growing community of scholars and educators.
I want to thank Dr. Shai Pilnick, the director of the Fish Center, and Hodaya Blau, our program coordinator, for helping to make this show possible. I also want to thank all of our community sponsors. The Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center in White Plains, the Center for Holocaust Education of East Valley JCC in Arizona, 3GNY, the Florida Holocaust Museum, the Rabbi Arthur Schneier Program for International Affairs at Yeshiva University, Shadowlight, Manhattan College Holocaust Genocide and Interfaith Education Center, the San Antonio Holocaust Museum, SOSUA 75, Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, 2 programs at the University of Miami, the Illinois Holocaust Museum, the Holocaust Education Center in Fukuyama, Japan, the Sister Rose Thiering Fund for Education in Jewish Christian Studies, Lake District Holocaust Project, Jewish Gen, the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, and the Holocaust Education Resource Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I hope that you will all join us next month when we have another airing of the next episode of Holocaust Remembrance Around the World. Bye-bye.